Well, welcome along to Jump to It, brought to you in association with IrishRacing.com. I'm Ed Quigley, Longshot Ted, and there is a lot to get through on today's show. We'll be looking back at a feast of Christmas action, some big talking points, some major performances as well, I think it's fair to say. And there was a horse winning at odds of 125 to 1 in Ireland, which caused a bit of a social media storm, I think it's fair to say. Talking of people who like to stir up a bit of controversy, let's bring in the team. We've got Vincent Finegan and Stephen Harris. Happy Christmas, gents. I hope it's all gone well. Very, very quickly, Stephen, was it a quiet one for you at Christmas, or were you rocking and raving?
No, we did do quite a bit of rocking and raving. My sort of head's cleared now. But I mean, to be honest, like all racing punters, by the time you've opened the presents about midday on Christmas Day and you're sort of trying to get rid of the in-laws, you're sort of fast forwarding, thinking to Boxing Day and beyond, aren't you? It was really good racing at Kempton, and in Ireland, the standard of racing over the last couple of days has been fantastic. Again, I always think it's about a stone better. Well, I think this year is probably 2. They just look miles and miles ahead of the English horses, full stop. Something we're going to talk about in the next hour or so.
Absolutely. And Vincent, was Santa kind to you?
Reasonably kind. It took him a while to get going, though. It was only yesterday I kind of started getting my head in front with a few bets. But yeah, it's been a good few days. Really good action. The racing was fantastic.
Well, someone who Santa was definitely very kind to was Danny Mullins, of course, who landed the King George in a very convincing style in the end on board Tornado Flyer. We'll come to you first, Stephen. Yes, there were a few disappointments in this race, noticeably Chantry House and Minella Indo, who failed to complete. But hard to take anything away from the winner, who was unexposed over 3 miles, and he proved he stayed, I think, in no uncertain terms.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree. I mean, it did look. He's probably also been running over the wrong trip for the last 2 years, in truth, because I mean, he looks like he'll stay marathons and beyond. I do think the general view tends to be it was a poor renewal where nothing really gave its running, apart from probably the winner in Clanders Oboe, who did what he does, travelled round like a certainty, and then faded on the ground that was a bit too soft for him in the end. I mean, he still ran really well. I think the talking point from the race for me, certainly financially, if nothing else, the first mile. Bryony and Rachel seemed to have an almighty sort of premeditated row on the lead, which ruined both of their chances. I mean, Frodon, I thought, ran a pretty heroic race in the circumstances. He kept jumping well and pulling out a bit more until weakening on the home turn. But Minella Indo was beaten probably at halfway, but they raced head-to-head for the first 5 furlongs or so at a ridiculous pace, and it was extraordinary tactical ride on Minella Indo. Certainly set the race up for a patiently ridden winner. I doubt the form has much bearing on the Gold Cup. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Frodon and Minella Indo came out, and if they all go to the Gold Cup, the pair of them finished a long way ahead of Tornado, to be honest with you. But yeah, it was a bit unsatisfying, wasn't it? I thought it was a slightly unsatisfying race, certainly from a punting point of view anyway.
Yeah, Vincent, we'll bring you in on Minella Indo. Here's an interesting point. Stephen alluded to it there. They went off a mad, I think they were doing sub 14-second fractions for all those stopwatch celebrities out there, which I'm told is more the kind of pace of your 2.5 milers. Even some 2 mile races are contested around that kind of pace. So they went off and almost fell a little bit in the hole. Nonetheless, Frodon kept going. Minella Indo was tailed off, before they'd exited the back straight. And I see Henry de Bromhead's quotes yesterday evening saying the horse is a bit shook up, doesn't seem himself. You'd have to worry. I mean, if you're a Minella Indo fan with the view of the Cheltenham Gold Cup in 11 weeks, you're pinning your hopes, I suppose, on Prestbury Park getting the horse back to his best. I mean, with you, is it a case of the race was just wrong for him, or do you think there's slightly more of an underlying issue with Minella Indo now?
You'd have to feel there's an underlying issue somewhere. But having said that, they mustn't have thought there was going to the race, because they presumably thought that the track was going to be too easy for the horse. Needs a galloping track, needs 3.25 miles to be at its best. So she tried to force the pace. Obviously, it was a mistake and it backfired on them. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe they come home, the horse is a bit shook, he's shocked, what the hell went on there? Give him a couple of weeks and he's fine, and gradually build him back up. Look, de Bromhead and Rachel Blackmore, they're a class outfit. You'd imagine that if the horse can be got back to his best, he will be back to his best in March, and he'll produce something like he produced last year. That's what you'd imagine. But it's hard to know, wasn't it? It was a very funny race, as you say. It was like a relay race. There were 4 different leaders going through the different stages of it. And then the one horse you didn't mention was that Asterion Forlonge. if that horse could jump, he could be anything, couldn't he? Really, truly, could be anything. He's obviously got a fantastic engine, but he just keeps throwing in a howler somewhere. And he was probably the most likely winner when they jumped.
I think he was.
Yeah, like it's still hard to tell because I don't know. I thought Danny Mullins, he's a very good jockey. He's a very good judge of pace, and he kind of stole the race on them. Maybe he had enough in the bag jumping the last to say he probably would have just held on. But having said that, Asterion Forlonge certainly looked the winner to most people when it came down to the last. So, as you say, there's a lot of questions over it. One thing that does come out of it is with the run of those two horses, you'd be saying that the Alaho run in Punchestown probably wasn't as bad as we thought at the time. And again, there's a lot of horses that have come out of that race and done very well. So you'd be maybe saying Alaho is probably the one horse that comes out of it very well, even though it didn't run.
Okay, if I'm just going to pin you with a final point on the King, but if there's one horse to take out the race with a view of the Cheltenham Gold Cup and the respective prices, we've got Tornado Flyer at 16s, Minella Indo's drifted to 10s, Chantry House of Frodon's 33s plus. Where do you think the value lies now?
Well, for me, the value lies in Galvin because he'll win the Gold Cup.
We're going to come. Yeah, but
that's what I would take out of the King George. I don't think any of them have a chance, really. Like, I suppose you'd be saying to yourself, oh, maybe Asterion Forlonge. That horse will not jump around in a Gold Cup at Gold Cup speed. And I just can't see it. There'll be a mistake somewhere. And unfortunately, that's just the nature of that horse. He's got a kink in him. So he's the one I would really like to take out of it, except for his jumping is the big problem. So for me, I don't take any of them. I look somewhere else, and realistically, Galvin for me is the one that you'd take from it. Yeah,
we'll come on to him in a minute. Stephen, any horse from the race you're putting a line through the King George?
Well, I think yes, in answer is the actual answer, but I think Frodon. Not that I'm saying to back him for the Gold Cup, so I suspect Nichols might look elsewhere. I doubt he'll run into it. I saw a very interesting interview with Nichols the other day where he was talking about Aintree. For a lot of his good horses, Stage Star, who just won the Challow this week. I can see him missing Cheltenham. Last Cheltenham was a very chastening experience for Paul Nichols, Dan Skelton, etc., etc. I don't think they'll be rushing to run all their horses again. And from what I've seen over the last week, they're probably quite right because the level is completely different. UK to Ireland it's not even a stone. I know I always say a stone. It's more than that. It's a completely different class. I don't think any of them. I don't think the King George form is worth a lot, but I wouldn't knock down Frodon. I don't think Frodon ran badly. I think he ran his race. Just the circumstances were against him on the day, to be honest.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he ended up back in the Ryanair, funnily enough.
I was going to say the Ryanair.
The strength and the ideal race. And his
record, an amazing record.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
absolutely. We talked about a King George. Vincent, you mentioned Galvin produced. This was an incredible race, wasn't it? The Savills Chase, absolutely stunning contest as just a neutral. Didn't get involved in it. Brilliant to watch. So go on then, Vincent. Galvin, he's run down a Plutard in the closing stages there. But at one stage, he looked, I thought, outpaced. Really, really good performance.
Yeah, he did look outpaced. He looked to be going nowhere jumping the last, in fairness, but didn't half quicken up or stayed past them, whatever way you want to look at it. It was the hell of a performance to get up and beat a Plutard. Galvin, you start looking at this horse, he's a 4-mile winner in Cheltenham last year when you thought, look, he probably needs about 5 miles, but realistically, he's got an engine, he's a proper horse. His run in the north is very good with Frodon too. He'd every chance there again. You just feel Frodon maybe had a bit of race fitness on him that day, potentially. That's probably what the issue was. But again, it comes back to the fact that Frodon is not a bad horse. There's no doubt. If Frodon can beat Galvin in the north, there's definitely another big day in Frodon somewhere when things fall right for him. But at the same time, you've got to be very impressed with Galvin, and you have to give them another 2.5 furlongs and up a hill. It's very hard to see a Plutard, regardless of what people may think about how a Plutard was ridden on the day in the Savills Chase. It's still very hard to see a Plutard finish ahead of Galvin over 2.5 furlongs further.
Well, it's an interesting one because I have a feeling, Stephen, you're going to be an opposite view to that.
I very rarely disagree with Vincent, actually, especially when it comes to Ireland, where I'm miles behind, no idea in relation to Vincent's knowledge. But I think in this instance, I love Rachel Blackmore, banged on about it for about 2 years, what a good jockey she is, and she's a brilliant horsewoman and tactically gets everything right. I think she actually got this wrong on A Plutard. The mitigating circumstances might be that I don't think Henry de Bromhead's horses are running that well, generally speaking. He's had a few disappoint. I'm not sure he's having winners in some of his best horses are still winning, and I thought A Plutard ran really well. Rachel was parked 6 wide throughout, and I thought she made up about 10 lengths very quickly. and used A+ Tard up to get there. Swept past Galvin like he was standing still on the home turn, quick and clear, put the race to bed. Whether the horse wasn't quite 100%, didn't see it out as perhaps he might have. I mean, he didn't really have a race when he won at Haydock, did he? He just cruised round against garbage, really, that were all beaten about a mile out. And I think this was virtually the first time he's come off the bridle, probably for about 18 months. I wouldn't mark him down at all. I could see A+ Star being ridden much more patiently, produced after the last in the Gold Cup, and I think he's probably got a lot more speed than Galvin. Now, what Vincent said is absolutely right. If the Gold Cup turns out to be a real slugfest on heavy ground, then you can certainly see Galvin powering up the hill, relentlessly sticking on grimly, and A+ Tard not getting home. But I doubt it will be. It rarely is these days, Ed, is it? I mean, often it's sort of good to soft these days at Cheltenham. So if that's the case, I think A+ Tard remains a very worthy favourite.
It's interesting. I'm totally fences in the moment. 6-1 best price Galvin to win the Cheltenham Gold Cup in 11 weeks' time. 7-2. A+ Tard's doubled in price on the back of that performance. Yeah, it definitely will be interesting going further afield. Now, some horses who I suppose more unexposed, I think it's fair to say. We're going to try and put a package together of emerging stars and try not to spend about 40 minutes on this section. But I know you're absolutely chomping in a bit there, Vincent, but just as a kind of overview of the Irish action, I mean, we've seen some spectacular performances, especially from a lot of novices. Pick out 2 or 3 you really think could be just a notch above, the rest of the remainder we saw.
Well, certainly Sir Gerhard looked absolutely awesome winning his maiden hurdle. We know how good he is. We've seen him last year. Okay, he wins in Cheltenham. He gets beaten in Punchestown by Kilcroot, but probably just gone a little bit over the top at that stage, perhaps. But he's a machine, isn't he, from what we saw the other day? Then we have this other horse over fences, the Novice Chaser, Galopin Des Champs. That was
wow.
He jumped like a buck, didn't he? He put some reasonable horses here to bed a long way from home, maybe more than a mile from home. They were all beat, which is astonishing. The interesting thing with his race is that Fury Road was due to run in that, but that was a master stroke by Gordon Elliott to take him out. Yeah. He takes him out of a Novice Chase worth 17.5 grand and wins 100,000 Grade 1 the following day. That really was. That's a horse, Fury Road. There's definitely some big days in this. He was a fair staying hurdler. He looks to be a much better chaser. If you need soft ground, I would think particularly to be at his absolute best. Other ones we saw, that Phil Dore, the 3-year-old of Gordon Elliott's, that looks nailed on for the triumph at this stage. Very hard to see anything get near this. I thought the other horse in Noel Meads, Lunar Power, had a chance. It was £3 better off for a length and a quarter from Fairyhouse, but got blown away, beaten 7 lengths. Phil Dore is definitely the best 3-year-old we have, which means it's probably the best 3-year-old there is. Other ones we had, that Mighty Potter, that was a fair performance again from another Gordon Elliott one. He'd a hell of a week, Gordon Elliott. He'd 10 winners. I think he'd 2 Grade 1 winners. He'd a load of seconds and thirds in the big races as well. Again, the domination between the 2 big yards in Ireland is just getting more and more extreme every time, isn't it? Woody Mullins had 14 winners. He had 3 Grade 1 winners and multiple seconds and thirds in those big races as well. So their dominance is the main thing, and most of the ones you'd pick out were trained by one or the other of those. Realistically, the only one that wasn't was Journey with Me. That was a hell of a performance at the Bromhead horse. They think they've got a star. They obviously have. And what we saw, the Kilcroot had every chance turning in there. A bit messy because the last hurdle was omitted. That seemed to be a bit of an issue for the final day of Leopardstown. It was a bit messy with the low lying sun. And we saw one horse. I don't know whether you've seen the images of it, but a mare that fell as well. That she looked to have taken off about 20 yards short of the fence, thinking that she had she saw the shadows or whatever. So it's definitely that. I feel with I don't know whether it's climate change or what it is, but we're seeing a lot of this winter with the low-lying sun taking a huge amount of hurdles and fences out of races, and it doesn't make for a good spectacle. And I don't think it helps to see which are the best horses. But at the same time, that Journey with Me looked like a very good horse. Minella Crooner to finish second is obviously decent too. Stayed on very well. So we've lots and lots of things to look forward to in the Irish racing this last few days.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, there was Fernie Hollow as well, wasn't there? Who looked and jumped very nicely, I thought, in a fiercely run contest. Stephen, a couple of stand-up performers for yourself?
Well, I'm going to Ireland as well, and I thought the 2, Galloping Des Champs, round Leopardstown, first time over fence. Never seen anything like it. I mean, it jumped. It was taking a length out of them at every fence, on the bridle, you're not going to see him beaten for a very long time. Injuries and all the rest of it permitting,
well,
he's going to have a string of ones.
If I could just jump in here, Stephen, this is the interesting thing to try and assess his performance compared to Brave Man's Game, who's just won a Grade 1. And obviously, I think you're around 2-1 for Galopin Des Champs to win the Festival Novices, around 4s, twice the price for Brave Man's Game. Are we going a little bit overboard of Galopin Des Champs, given that he has just beaten horses with probably 2 stone below what Brave Man's Game beat at Kempton?
That's fair comment, but we've been looking at racing, haven't we, for the last 5 or 6 years, and Ireland are so much better class. I'd be stunned if Brave Man's Game is anywhere near good enough to trouble Galopin. I certainly wouldn't want to lay 2-1. I mean, if Willie Mullins told you it was going to run in that race, definitely, it's not that far away, is it? I mean, it'll end up being a 5-runner race. Nichols is already talking about going to Aintree with Brave Man's Game. He could end up being about a 3-1 on chance on the day. Not impossible. I don't think you'll see Galopin Des Champs beaten for another year or so. Maybe when it goes into Grade 1s against older horse, blah, blah, blah. But
I'm with you.
I was so impressed. I've never seen jumping like it. I mean, absolutely incredible. I know it had an uncontested lead, but it was going a proper gallop. It wasn't. And the other one is Fernie Hollow. Again, absolutely devastating. Brilliant jumping in a brutally strongly run. I mean, if you only watch the running, it looks like it's all out and it's hard ridden to make sure and all the rest of it. But they absolutely flew round 2 very good horses. So they were the 2 for me. But I mean, again, Ireland are miles in front of the UK. I mean, I backed Brave Man's Game. He went out to 11-8 Brave Man's Game. Horrendous after timing here, but that was an absolutely incredible price in a complete match. The 2 rags are $1 million. The horse of Lucinda Russell's Ahoy Senor didn't jump fluently, basically. I mean, I doubt the form's anything special. I know Brave Man's Game is a very, very nice horse, but I'd still think Ireland are at least a stone clear.
Well, at least
one race we didn't mention, and it definitely is worth a mention, is Classical Dream against Flooring Porter. That was astonishing. The gallop they went there again was absolutely amazing. And it turns out, I was just looking at the times of the race. I wouldn't be someone who really takes much note of times, but Flooring Porter ran 33 seconds.
Vincent, only worry about time when you're serving it, I was told.
Very good thing. But Flooring Porter ran 33 seconds quicker than he did to win the same race last year and gets beat. That was some performance from the pair of them. Like, they're miles clear of everything else, and they're not bad horses in behind. That Burning Victory and the rest of them, they're decent level of horse, and yet they're miles clear. So hard to know, do they leave their Cheltenham races or their Dublin Racing Festival races? Did they leave them behind at Christmas? It's hard to see those horses produce that level of performance again, but wow, it was good to see.
Absolutely.
It was a proper scrap, wasn't it? I thought the start was fascinating there, because when you first watched it live, you're looking up at the screen, you thought, there's been a full start. But actually, Classical was out like a little greyhound out the traps. The tape went up, and he sort of pinged, and he got sort of 8 lengths before all the others even had begun the race. And he only won by a couple of lengths. I mean, you could make a case the runner-up will reverse the form just on that. I mean, personally, I doubt it. It was a proper race. And I think Vincent's right. It could leave a mark. I mean, it was a proper hard race, Mind you, it's months till Cheltenham. I'm sure they'll be freshened up and ready to go again, won't they? But it was a really good race.
Classical Dream looks like a very difficult ride, doesn't he? He's just always on the edge every time. He's going to blow over or just about keep him on a tight rein, which is what Paul Townend did. And fair dues to him, he gave him a cracking ride, in fairness.
Yeah, not long now though, gents. It's less than 11 weeks. Not that I've got the countdown clock on my desk here, but I'm going to throw in a couple. The Emerging Star, a little bit of a dark horse. I mean, sent off 8-11 to win the Leopardstown bumper, but Redemption Day absolutely bolted up with Patrick Mullins on board for Father Willie. Of course, there was a lot of talk about a lot of the other more illustrious established stable stars, but this looks really interesting. Very much a soft ground pedigree. Has the same sire as Royal Pagaille. And I was looking through his breeding. Very much a soft ground throughout the family. I'd be really interesting in some of the top bumpers with the mud flying, I think, throughout the spring, if indeed that is the case. And one who's not an emerging star, but there was a returning star, Shishkin, came back and, of course, absolutely bolted up at Kempton. And Nicky Henderson, I mean, he was absolutely almost doing cartwheels, for want of a better phrase, up in the stands at Sunbury Park there, wasn't he? He must have been absolutely delighted with that. Was the ground a bit soft? Was the horse not quite fit? Well, anyway, he's just stumped a Tingle Creek winner, Bailey, coming off the bridle. So, it sounds like they put him in entry for the Clarence House. He's kind of got the vibe out early, has Nicky Henderson. That race will come too soon. Sounds like they're going to go Game Spirit and then the Champion Chase. But we're just hoping Shishkin and Energamine, of course, can keep all legs intact for the absolute showdown we all want to see, as I said, in about 10.5 weeks time from now. Moving on quickly to other topics, Stephen, we'll come to you. The news broke after the Welsh Grand National won by I Will Do It for Sam Thomas that former Cheltenham Gold Cup winner Native River was retiring at the age of 11. Immediately in the aftermath, I believe, I'm happy to be wrong here, but Joe Tizard said, no, we have no immediate plans to retire him. But after dinner that evening with connections, they decided to pull plug on his fantastic CV, I think it's fair to say. And what would be your overriding memories or reflections upon the Tizard-trained superstar, Stephen?
Well, he was a brilliant jumper, a brilliant front runner, a relentless galloper. I mean, he was one of those who always got carried out on his sword when he was at his peak, didn't he? You'd always knew he'd give his running. Had a fantastic strike rate. I do think they've done the right thing, actually. We were talking off air whether it retired too early, because he didn't go a yard in the Welsh National at all. He was the first horse under the cosh. And once they've gone, these horses. Unfortunately, you get these horses who, they've won Gold Cups, they've won big races. Their rating is so high, they can't really run in handicaps with any realistic chance. They're going off 33 to 1 in handicaps. The Veterans Chases, they're too high rated for them. So unless you keep running them into the ground for like 2 seasons, get their mark back down, by which time it'll be 13 or 14. So they've done the right thing, I think. But a heroic battler. Actually, Richard Johnson got on superbly well with him, didn't he? They were an amazing combination from the front, getting those lengths at every jump, pulling out more. A terrific battler,
Yeah, I was going to say the 2016 Ladbrokes Trophy, where he gets headed against Double Ross, I think it is, and then comes back to win at Newbury, was a great performance. And obviously, he'll always be remembered for the duel with Mike Bite, of course, in the Cheltenham Gold Cup of 2018, when Mike Bite was in running players. Thought it was a foregone conclusion, didn't they, with Nico swinging over Native River. He just toughed it out in the closing stages. On to other interesting news, Vincent. Now, An Forghas was a winner at 125 to 1 at Limerick. I'm not going to say any more. Take it away.
This was an amazing race, to be honest with you. Only 7 runners, first off. A 7-runner bumper, and you have a horse going off at 125 to 1. That, back in the old days, that would have never happened. It didn't matter if it only had 3 legs. You wouldn't see anything over 1 back in the day for a bumper in the likes of Limerick. But anyway, 125 to 1 chance. Ridden by a guy called James Cunheady. He's 40 years of age. He owns it. He trains it, he rides it, the family bred it, and it went 1,000 to 1. It was 1,000 to 1 for a little bit prior to the race on the exchanges. It was 1,000 to 1 in running. It went as well because the horse went off clear, 30 lengths more clear all the way around, and then it stopped. It was literally like the engine stalled. The horse went from 30 lengths in front right the way back. All the others coming up to him. He looked like he was about to be swallowed before the turn into the straight, but somehow, I have no idea how, he kept going, and he just kept pulling a little bit more, and ended up winning by a couple of lengths in the end. One little interesting fact, which maybe takes away a little bit from it, is the fact that the jockey was cautioned afterwards. He had the wrong whip. It was his first winner on the track. He'd ridden a few point-to-point winners, but he didn't have an air-cushioned whip, so he was using an old-style whip. So maybe they do make a difference, those whips. But my goodness, what a shock that was to see. I've never seen anything like it. A horse that coming back like that, like a stone dropping through it, and yet he kept pulling out and just kept ahead of them all, turning in. It was a cracking race, to be honest.
Yeah, it was indeed. We'll wrap that section up, and now we'll look ahead to the upcoming races. Wow, for the main races to concentrate on over the next few days or so, of course, the meeting jumping off your page is Cheltenham's New Year's Day meeting. Always a good card, this. Stephen, we kick off with the 12:15, the Ballymore Novices Hurdle listed action here. I want to call this a Ballymore trial. People get irate and hot under the collar when everything's a trial for the festival, but look, you'd like to think there may be 1 or 2 coming out of this with some form of claims for the festival itself. I'm presuming probably Iron Maximus will head up the market at the time of recording. We did not have prices for this, but 7 go to post. What's your view on this one?
Yeah, it's a good clash of the best English novices so far, really. I mean, Iron Maximus, I know I've bored on about it before he made his debut at Exeter on this programme. All the Henderson mob were all on for the Supreme. He was their best horse. He won his bumper at Cheltenham on soft ground, beating My Drogo last season when he wasn't wildly fancied and thought to need the run. So they've wrapped him up. He needed his run all right at Exeter, although that form with JPR1 now looks very strong. And he was a bit gawkish at the hurdles, and Nico did his usual 6 wide, hit the front, pull, didn't really settle him, we've seen it 25 times this season, we'll probably see it another 25. But then he went to, I think it was Newbury last time out, and he landed the odds with the minimum of fuss, and I really like that run. And after the race, they were saying he needs softer ground, really. He's going to definitely get that at Cheltenham. I mean, we haven't got you to walk the course, Ed, unfortunately. I know you're on your holidays again. But usually you've done a couple of laps at Cheltenham to tell us how soft it is.
Well, I've sent my mole down to the course. He just says on the quicker side of soft is what he's saying at the moment. I think there's a couple of showers. Right. So it's going to be softish. It's not going to be bottomless, put it that way. Yeah.
I think that'll suit Iron Maximus. I think he's got the Dan Skelton horse down the bottom to beat Gin and Tonic, who won a race the other day in some style, and the second Nothing to Ask has come out and bolted up at Chepstow this week, so that form's good. I think Iron Maximus is a worthy favourite. I'd be very price dependent as usual as to whether I wanted to back him. I seem to keep falling into this trap of tipping up horses ridden by Nico de Boinville, despite giving him a coating every week, and it's sort of it's a difficult thing to price up this race, comparing all the different form lines. But if Iron Maximus is around 5-2, I think I've seen a bit of 2-1 in the early markets, then I think that would be a fair price, given the regard he's held in at home.
So did Nico de Boinville send you a Christmas card at all, Stephen? Anyway,
right,
look ahead to the 12:50 at Cheltenham. Handicap chase action over 3 miles, 2 furlongs and 70 yards for your rail movement aficionados. Wide open looking contest here, 12 go to post. Any fancy in this one, Stephen?
Well, this is 5-1 the field looking at the early market, Ed, and I like under supervision here. Nigel Twiston-Davies going particularly well. He's got a much smaller string of horses this season, as we know. Under supervision has run 3 times in 3 warm races, all at Cheltenham by coincidence. Over this trip, just a bit shorter, when third behind Korak Rambler last time out. I thought that was a really good run. They dropped him out last initially to get his confidence back. Did a bit too much in the middle of the race, hit the front and just faded up the hill. I think he'll probably be ridden with a little bit more circumspection here up to 3 mile 2. This is a proper test of stamina. I think that's just about the best form on offer. It was his first run in a handicap. There should be loads more to come. He's around about 5-1. I think he's the standout form contender for me.
Okay, under supervision around the 5-1 mark there for Stephen. Going on to the Dipper now at 125. Grade 2 novice chase action. Obviously, the aforementioned My Drogo would have been about 1-5 for this, I think it's fair to say. However, unfortunately, he's on the sidelines for the season now, in case you missed that news, with a tendon injury. As a consequence, this is kind of everyone's having a go at this contest now. What probably would have been a 3-runner race is a 9-runner race. On official ratings, you could throw a blanket over a few of these. This is a bit of a trappy contest, isn't it, Stephen?
I was quite surprised that I agree with you. I thought this would be 3 or 4-1 the field looking at it, but there's a short one, La Hompresse, who's very impressive at Ascot. And if you remember that race last weekend, La Hompresse comes from a yard, Venetia Williams. She's absolutely flying at the minute. They're all winning. Her strike rate's incredible. And La Hompresse glided round Ascot, but jumped markedly left at every fence. And won with stones in hand. So going to Cheltenham, you would imagine would suit. Not always the case that it's as straightforward as that. But La Hompresse open to loads of improvement. The one I liked here, and I actually think at the current price, I see he's nudging 20-1. Gladiator Alan. I quite liked his chasing debut win at Exeter. He only won by about an inch, but I think they thought he'd need the experience. He got beat one of yours, didn't he?
Elixir Danucci.
That's it. I was scared to pronounce it, but and I quite like that performance. But next time at Ascot behind Pic D'Orhy, Gladiator Allen disappeared into the car park at every fence. Who's jumping violently left, and I thought he ran quite well in the circumstances. So 20-1, left-handed track, soft ground ideal. Chester taking off a few pounds. I think he's overpriced. I think he'll run really well.
Okay, Gladiator Allen. I was just going to throw in, funny enough, another one of the Tizard horses, but Oscar Elite showed some very smart hurdle form last year. Was placed in the Grade 1 Albert Bartlett, of course, behind, and then ran really well at Aintree behind Assignon Brave Man's Game. Of course, that form's worked out pretty well. I was a little bit disappointing at Huntingdon last time out, but I wonder whether they got the trick wrong with this horse, and maybe he is in a 3-miler, and a stiff 2.5 on soft may suit him down to the ground. I think he was around 10-1 when I last looked. The big betting race of the day, I suppose you say, is the 2 o'clock, the Paddy Power New Year's Day Handicap Chase over an extended 2.5 miles. Stephen, I know myself and you are very much singing from the same hymn sheet here. We're with the team scouting, if you like. All I want to see, though, is more rain for this horse. Absolute mudlark. But I presume you're thinking along the same lines as myself here.
Yeah, I've stolen this from you, Ed, because a few weeks ago you put this horse up for a race on a Saturday, and I think he was it was a couple of weeks in advance, and maybe he was 16 or 20 to 1 or something. And anyway, over the next 2 weeks after you'd obviously alerted your thousands of followers onto him, he crashed. I think he was about 5 to 1 to, and of course, then it was like good ground or faster than good ground.
Didn't rain for 8 days. Didn't rain for 8 days in Cheltenham. Yeah, that was
unbelievable. Especially with what's happened since. It's not stopped raining here anyway. But no, Al Nadam ran an absolute screamer in the Ultima, didn't he, last season? He finished 7th in the end, but that doesn't tell the true story. I mean, he got it. He didn't get home. He was right up on a very strong pace throughout and just wilted up the hill. He ran a screamer. He's only had 6 runs over fences. His first run at Haydock, as you've alluded to, he was given a sight or a school round. He needed to run. He finished last of 4, but he ran better than that. He's back into a pretty hot handicap here. One thing to say, at the moment, there's 16 runners declared for this race. A Saturday handicap with 16. If anyone wants to lay me evens that less than 16 runners turn up on the day by the time they jump off, I will happily take evens 15 or less. There's no way in the world they'll let 16 run here, because from a punting point of view, the terms are very much in your favour. 4 places. Some firms will be offering 5 or 6 places. Play each way. I would imagine Al Nadam, as you say, soft ground, 6 to 1 each way. He cannot help run well. He'll nearly have to win with any luck in running.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with him too. I just want to see a lot more of the word soft than any, or good than any other of any good in the ground description, shall we say. Now we'll move on to the 310 grade 2 hurdle action here, the Relkeel hurdle. Vincent, we'll bring you in on this one because there is an Irish angle. The level and consistent mare, Stormy Island, makes the journey with that man, Danny Mullins, on board again. Of course, he had a right old time of things, didn't he, at Kempton over the Christmas period? Could he cause a little bit of an upset? She caused a little bit of an upset here? I mean, I'm just looking on official figures. She's not all that far away, is she?
No. And she's got some fair form in Cheltenham as well. If you go back, she was second in the mare's hurdle to Roxana, going back a couple of years ago. She's a front runner, so I'm not sure that's going to be ideal for Cheltenham necessarily. Other tracks are more places where you say, oh yeah, front runners and make all great things around certain places. Cheltenham is not somewhere you often see it, but having said that, you're going to get a run for your money with this. The stable's in absolutely flying form, and Danny Mullins is a hell of a jockey. So you've got everything, and he's very good judge of pace as well. So lots of positives. The one negative is the run the last day was probably too bad to be true. Seasonal reappearance, ran in the honeysuckle race in Fairyhouse, and made the running there again, went off like a hare, but dropped out from the third last and was a spent force in the second last and trailed in. So you're taking a little bit on trust there, but there's no doubt this horse has a chance. Like, it was well back in the honeysuckle race, 20 to 1 into 9 to 1, so it was obviously showing something at home prior to that. Wouldn't be surprised to see her run a big race. Whether she can make all or not is the question, because there's some decent English horses in this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a solid affair, this, wasn't it? Stormy Island, the best price, 15 to 2 at the time of recording. Interesting one here, Stephen. You got Brewed Up a Storm, who looks absolutely revitalised after the wind operation, and on official figures has a bid in hand over most of this field, other than McFabulous, who hasn't been seen for a while, and of course was held behind him at Fontwell back in February. He arrives here after a wind operation, so it's trainers going to that old trusted method, I suppose, to see who can unlock some more improvement.
Yeah, I mean, I like McFabulous. He's a smooth traveller with a strong turn of foot when the cards fall right. He lost his way a bit last back end, a short price defeat, and then disappointing on his final run. That was probably one run too many. This is a fascinating market race, because when the prices went up, I think McFabulous was about a 7 to 4 chance. Well, he's now bigger than 3 to 1 on the exchanges, and Paul Nicholls was tepid in his sort of, he does these interviews with all his runners for the weekend, and usually there's 10 certainties on the card. But McFabulous, he said, he never works particularly well at home, which I always tend to read in between the lines, is that he's actually not working very well, is the truth, and they probably might need the run. He's the sort of horse, McFabulous. He'll either be 9 to 4 and run a screamer, or you can see him being 5 or 6 to 1, needing the run, quiet ride, and the betting could look completely differently. I mean, I've selected McFabulous for betting expert, but I do have doubts after hearing Paul Nicholls be so negative. The other one who's interesting is Guard Your Dreams, who did us a right turner last time out, when very, very brave under a forceful ride, winning right on the nod, having done plenty soon enough, I thought. He's a progressive young horse going the right way. He'll stay further than this trip. He's fit. That counts for plenty. I expect he'll run well. He's 10-1. You could probably do worse than back him. 7 runners, though, so it's a win-only race, really. A race to watch, I suspect, rather than get too involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to rather boringly go with a favourite here, Brewing Up a Storm, who just looks absolutely turbocharged at the moment. I suppose the downside for a bit of balance is the horse doesn't have any winning form at Prestbury Park in the track, but I just think the horse may just be better now than he was in previous times for the Ollie Murphy team.
That's true of McFabulous as well, because I was just looking back at McFabulous. He's run once at Cheltenham in a bumper when he was a well-backed favourite, and he fell out. He was well beaten. He weakened quite a long way out, and Nicholls has never run him at Cheltenham since. So he is now an 8-year-old. So it's not like he'd have had a few opportunities. He could have run him. I suppose he would have run in the Relkeel. He won the Relkeel last year, but it was rerouted to Kempton, I think, in January. So he was going to run him. Maybe I'm dreaming something up there, but he is 8, and he's only run once at Cheltenham in a bumper, and I suppose a lot of horses don't have the track, don't they? Do they? So
yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see, as you say, on the back of that return, how he shapes up. Over to Ireland then. Tramore, the Savills New Year's Day Chase, 2 mile 6 action coming up at 2:20 on your cards, and obviously only one horse most eyes will be focusing on, and that is a horse who suppose has made this race his own in recent times. Album Photo, the previous Cheltenham Gold Cup winner, thumped Acapella Bourgeois. I think it was 19 lengths off the top of my head in this contest 12 months ago. Vincent, is it just a case of he turns up and does the same again, or do you see a potential banana skin in this field of 6?
No, I think you're right. I think we're going to see the same thing we've seen the last 3 years. He's going to win it for a 4th time. Look, it's a strange race that Willie Mullins has picked out for him as his prep each year. Worked unbelievably well to go and win 2 Gold Cups. It's not a track you would pick. First of all, they're going the other way around compared to Cheltenham if you're trying to get a horse to win a Gold Cup. It's a strange decision, but it's worked for him, and obviously he's going the same route again, not only with Album Photo, but he runs 5 of the 6 runners, Willie Mullins here. So the bottom line is, as you say, Acapella Bourgeois was nowhere near him last year, but this is a bit like Istabracken Theatre World back in the day. It's the forecast every time. The last 2 years we've had it. Album Photo beats Acapella Bourgeois. We're going for the hat-trick this time. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see the same. The thing this time as well with Album Photo is he doesn't have a grade 1 penalty, which he had the previous times he's won this. So he's actually better off than he was previously because he didn't win a grade 1. Obviously didn't win the Gold Cup last year. So everything's in his favour. He'll probably be a very short price. Paul Townend rides. He'll win. I presume that's as simple as that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on a wider point, Stephen, with this horse, is he still a factor in regards to Cheltenham Gold Cup at the age of 10?
He could be, couldn't he? I mean, he's not got much to. He ran a screamer in the Gold Cup last year. I mean, people forget he wasn't beaten that far. He could be. I mean, I suppose he's not getting any younger. I don't think this is a fantastic. I mean, Irish racing, as I've said, is much better than UK racing by a long way. But this isn't a fantastic advert for Irish racing. Willie Mullins runs 5. Gordon Elliott's got one down the bottom, which is the only, looks like, he's 12-1 bar 1. It's not a fantastic advert, really. I mean, it's very lucky that Willie Mullins is sporting enough to run the other 4 horses. I mean, I doubt they're going to get in his way on the way round, are they? They're not going to be jumping across him or heading him in against the rail. He'll get a clear run at every fence and he'll win if he's anywhere near straight. But whether it's a good spectacle for bookmakers or punters is another matter. But there we go. You can only run against what there is to run against. And Album Photo looks like he's got a stone in hand, really.
Yeah, indeed. Should, barring accidents, be a straightforward assignment for the previous Cheltenham Gold Cup winner. Over at Fairyhouse now, the 240. We've got some really exciting action here. This Mare's Chase, grade 3, over the extended 2 miles and 5 furlongs. The most notable horse, of course, is champion chase winner Put the Kettle On, going up in trip here, something which Henry de Bromhead alluded to possibly on the back of her disappointing run at Cheltenham not long ago. Vincent, I mean, what do you make of her here? Again, it amazes me, really. I get in my head, Champion Chase winner, 9 stone in hand. But when you actually look at it on paper here, this is a trappy little contest, isn't it?
This is tricky. What's interesting, a little aside to it, is there were 10 horses entered for this. 5 had high ratings. The lowest, the 5 that run, the lowest rating I think was a 146. So decent level of horses running here.
Yeah.
But the other 5 were all only rated around 100. They were 50 pounds behind, and somehow someone has seen sense and told the 5 of them, listen, don't turn up here. There is absolutely no point. This is a high class race for mares. Very good horses. Put the kettle on, as you say, Champion Chase winner. The big question mark is the trip here. We're dealing with 2 miles, 5.5 furlongs, never run beyond 2.5, and is penalised here as well. So it's having to give weight away to the others. I can't see Put the Kettle On win myself, particularly with the run the last day wasn't a great run with Nupa Negra. So you're looking at then, you're down to, for me, realistically, you're down to 2. You're down to Ellie May and Mount Ida. Mount Ida won the Kim Muir in Cheltenham. That's 3.25 miles. This is a good bit back now. Having said that, it did win over 2.5 the last day in Thurles, so couldn't rule it out. But at the same time, if you go back to this Ellie May, second to Colreevy in Cheltenham in the Mayor's Chase last year, and on top of that, in a course and distance race here back in April, Ellie May gave £6 and 3 length beating to Mount Ida, and now gets £3. So was £9 better off and beat the horse 3 lengths the last day. I think this will win. This Ellie May, Willie Mullins is the stable's flying. No reason why this won't win.
Okay, Ellie May for Vincent there to beat the previous Champion Chase winner. We'll let you wrap up the Sunday action, Vincent. All sorts of fun going on there, isn't there? There's Novice Chase to keep your eyes on. Of course, the Lawlors of Naas, Novice Hurdle, if I pronounced that correctly as well.
You did. Lawlors of Naas, a good pub in Naas, yeah. Very nice place, does good food and everything. Lawlors of Naas, Grade 1 contest. Gordon Elliott is the key here. He's been targeting a few of them for this when they've been winning. He's got this Ginto in it and Hollow Games. They're both in the same ownership, the Bective Stud people. So the question is, which one does he run? Will he run both? Perhaps he will. He certainly, when each of them won the last day, he said they'd go here. That Ginto won in Navan, it beat Eric Blood Axe, which has won since St Limerick at Christmas. It beat that 11 lengths, so it's fair form. You've got Hollow Games, won a Grade 3 at Navan the last day, and the issue there was that race turned into a bit of a sprint, so he didn't look that impressive in it. But according to Davy Russell, who rode him, and Gordon Elliott, saying, look, give this horse a bit more of a gallop and track, and Naas is definitely going to be that. They should go a reasonable gallop here, and if they do, Hollow Games is the most likely winner, I would have thought. There's a couple of other ones in it. There's Grand Jury of the Bromheads, won a maiden in Punchestown. The runner-up has won since as well. And then you've got a thing in it called What Do You Want of Willie Mullins's. That was a 2.5 mile maiden winner in Navan again. This is 3 of them won in Navan last time out, which is a stiff track, and they're coming to another stiff track in Naas, so they all seem to want a bit of a test of stamina. The interesting thing about the Willie Mullins horse is it beat Ginto in a bumper, so there's a line of form there. But realistically, if they all turn up, which they won't, but it looks like Hollow Games will, and if Hollow Games turns up, it should probably win.
Okay, that's excellent. It's a comprehensive review of all the action in Ireland. Now it's time for our tips of the week. Well, looking back at last week's selections then, gentlemen, who have I got first on my list? We've got Stephen here. We come to you. You, of course, had a brave man's game, didn't you? 4 units on that horse to win the Quarto Star Novices, and that obliged. And then Frodon in the King George. We've touched on that in the show, haven't we? Yeah, brave man's game was very impressive. A wonderful jumper of a fence for a novice. Looks like an old hand. That left you with 3 units in profit. So good week there. Are you going to play these profits up this week? What are we going with, Stephen?
I do think it's a really competitive day's racing at Cheltenham. 2 bets for me, Ed. 125, Gladiator Elen, who I see is around 20 on the exchanges. I think the firms are 14, 16 maybe. I think he'll go really well on soft ground. We've touched on him already. He's got conditions to suit. I was taken with his chasing debut, and I think he had excuses at Ascot. And in the 2 o'clock, Al Nadam, who I have stolen shamelessly from you, soft ground, 16 runner handicap, 6-1. I think he's a fair price. He has to run well. He's got everything in his favour. He's only had 6 runs over fences. The yard's going well. Harry Skelton booked. He must go close with any luck in running.
Yeah, Unadam, each way a pleasure in that big handicap chase that comes up at Cheltenham. I think it's 2:00 on New Year's Day. Vincent, we come to you. Wasn't the strongest performances from you, I think it's fair to say. However, this is another week. What are we going with this time round?
The only good thing for me over the last few days was the fact that one of the ones I tipped didn't run, and it's trained by Jessica Harrington, who can't train a winner. Whatever's gone on there, she's gone. I think the last winner she had was back on the 29th of October.
Wow. Very
unusual for such a top yard. But anyway, that's an aside. This weekend, I just thought Ellie May would win in Fairyhouse. For me, it's going to be the value there, because you're going to get a price with Put the Kettle On in the race, and the other horse, Mount Ida, as well.
Yeah.
Then Hollow Games Sunday, depending on what turns up. If it's odds against, I think Hollow Games is definitely worth a bet there. And then one little odd one is in Tramore. Last race in Tramore, Andrew McNamara runs a horse here called Less of the Negativity, which is probably a good thing to be doing for the new year. And this landed a gamble here back on the 9th of December in Tramore, back from 25 into 7-2. That was his first run since it transferred ownership from his late father to him, or trainership, I should say. And there's another half interesting horse in that, is a horse called Not to Back Now, just to watch. If you happen to look at that last race in Tramore, there's a horse called Father Gilligan's Voyage. It is unseated rider 4 of the last times it's run, which is quite unusual. I would have thought normally they fall, pull up, do whatever, but it keeps unseating rider. So it'd be interesting to see if it does it again. And just a last thing to mention is an Irish trainer, John McConnell, runs 2 in Musselburgh on Saturday. I think they're well worth looking out for them. One of them is a 3-year-old called Meritorious, an ex-John Gosden horse. Could be anything rated 80 plus on the flat. The Tory won them last time he ran on the flat back in May. And he runs another one called Anna Benina. John McConnell sending 2 over to Musselburgh. I'd say you could take it that they're fancied.
Absolutely. Keep your eyes on those up in Scotland. Looking back at myself from last week, Elegant Escape just doesn't quite look the force of old. Down to Work. Now, that's a frustrating horse, because he's clearly got an engine, but he just sucks you in, doesn't he? And then belts one fence and lets you down. That was pretty much the story of that race for him. But managed to get some profit on board with Stage Star, winning the Grade 1 Shallow Hurdle. Just very quickly on that horse, he's, of course, taken the brave man's game route into things, going that way. Paul Nicholls on the wider point of committing to Cheltenham. Again, I think there's going to be a lot of owner-trainer politics down in Team Ditcheat here, whether they kind of swerve Cheltenham and go for Aintree and then look at chasing next year. But definitely a horse with a lot of ability, that Grade 1 winner there, Stage Star. So on to this week. Yeah, I'm with Stephen. Absolutely. I'd just like to see even more rain arrive for Unadam in the 2:00 at Cheltenham on New Year's Day. 6-1, each way a pleasure. I'm finding it hard to boot him out the frame. I've tipped him win only, but I'd be shocked if with a clear round he couldn't finish in the money there. And Iron Maximus will probably be short, but I just think this horse has got a lot of ability. The penny appeared to really drop at Newbury last time out, going left-handed. And I think there should be a lot more to come from him. So that's our tips of the week. Many thanks for you for watching at home. And my thanks, of course, to Stephen and to Vincent. Don't forget, of course, to check out irishracing.com. You can keep up with all the latest news, updates, tips and features. Of course, don't forget to follow Stephen's expert advice on bettingexpert.com. Well, I hope you had a lovely Christmas. Do enjoy your new year. Whatever you do, please do gamble responsibly, and we'll see you again soon.